warm welcome to the Nobel Prize Museum in Stockholm and this online program with students and educators from 3 countries, from Afghanistan, the US and Sweden, and the theme Education in Challenging Times. My name is Erika Lanner and I'm the director of the Nobel Prize Museum, a museum built upon the ideas, the science, the peace efforts and the literature that has been awarded the Nobel Prize for the greatest benefit to humankind, as written by Alfred Nobel when establishing the prize through his will. Next week, the Nobel laureates of 2020 will receive the Nobel Prizes, and ceremonies this year will be digital instead of physical due to the ongoing pandemic. Today, we have gathered students and educators from 3 countries for a 1.5-hour program where we will share experiences, knowledge, and inspiration around the theme Education in Challenging Times. Too many people in the world today are deprived of education due to poverty, inequality, war, and ongoing conflicts. According to the UN, nearly 1/5 of the global population of children is still out of school, and the ongoing pandemic provides further challenges to the situation. The goal must be to secure education for all. 1 month ago, on November 2nd, Kabul University was subject to a terrorist attack, and 18 students and 1 staff member were killed. One student cleared up the glass shards from his room and wrote, "Now I can go study again." But what does it take to pursue education under threats of violence? What can we do to foster hope for the future? In this meeting, we will listen to voices of students and educators from Kabul University who will share their stories and their hopes for the future. In Sweden and the US, gathered students and educators will listen to these voices and share inspiration and knowledge in a mutual exchange between us. We're very pleased also to have on board our guest speaker, former Deputy Secretary General of the UN, Jan Eliasson. The Nobel Prize shows how science, literature and peace efforts may make the world a better place to live in, and for that, education is crucial. Today we'll listen to different perspectives on the theme Education in Challenging Times. Let's start by introducing today's speakers. Over to Education Director Annika Hedås-Falk, who will coordinate the program.
Thank you, Erika, and welcome everyone. So, as you've heard, we have speakers from 3 different countries, and now I'd like to introduce them. And we start in Afghanistan, but unfortunately, the internet is not so stable, so some of the students have sent in videos to us to show during the program. So from Afghanistan, we have students Freshta Hashimi, Zekria Ghaffori, Sajat Nayati, Bashir Meyarze, Tamana Ziar, Ahmad Omar Fazli, and we have also Associate Professor Abdul Qawar Jawad and Professor Dr. Mohammed Osman Baburi, the Chancellor of Kabul University. And from the US, we have teachers and students from top universities, Stanford University and New York University. So we have the students, you can wave if you hear your voice, Adrienne Baer, Nicole Gonzalez, Donald Swen, Sujudi Dalia, Gabriela Kreutzberger, and Tammy Rodriguez. And we have from Gallatin School for Individualized Study at New York University, we have Lynn Carey Mehta. And we have adjunct professor in the mechanical engineer department in the design group and the executive director of Stanford's innovative product design program, Bill Burnett. And from Sweden, we have on spot here at the museum, Sofia Holmdahl, president of the Stockholm University Student Union, And online, we have Elis Vibacke, Vice President of the Stockholm University Student Union. And here at the museum with me, I also have Fateme Kavari, who is a student at Globala Gymnasiet and a peace activist. And the experts and educators from Sweden joining us here today are Jan Eliasson, former Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. Hi, Jan. And here at the museum, we have Anna Karlstedt, who is Faculty Program Director at Stockholm University. Online also, we have the Senior Association Officer for Swedish Committee for Afghanistan, Enayat Adel. Are you there? Yeah, and we have Erika Lanner, who you already met, the museum director, and my colleague Lotta Jeppsson, and then myself, Annika, I'm the education director. So, now we have a greeting from students from Kabul University, brave students fighting for the right to education. So let's listen to their voices at the beginning of this program.
I haven't got those words which could express my emotions and the pain inside me due to murder of my dears in Kabul University attack. It's not the first time, it's not the first terror, and I think it won't be the last. Every day we are witness of losing our dears, missing our sisters and brothers, and I myself was witness of killing two my innocent classmates in Kabul University attack. That's what we are struggle every day in Afghanistan, and being as a student, getting day by day hurt in Afghanistan. What's our fault? What's our mistake? Why you are killing us? Why you are want wash out the motivation of our young generation?
On 2nd of November, we all were supposed to start our 5th semester. We all were so happy for having a new class and entering to a new phase of our studies, but all our happiness disappeared by horrific attack. I have passed many attacks, but will never forget that horrible day. I got injured while escaping from the classroom. Unfortunately, my two classmates were marathid, and more than 5 of them were injured. I saw bodies with bullets, students who were screaming and escaping from classroom. I was really lucky to have a chance to jump from window. I saved my life, but regretting all my lifetime. But I couldn't help my two classmates. I wish they could escape and were alive now. If I say I am living a lottery life, I won't be wrong. Anyways, we all in Afghanistan are living a lottery life. Everyday life in Afghanistan is so painful. We're getting awake by sounds of rocket and explosion and sleeping with counting the amount of death. We wish to meet back our family while leaving the home and hope for a better future among all the unfortunates. Our university is a symbol of unity and harmony. A place of enjoy, equal, a place of dreams and hopes where everyone, poor and rich, came together and enjoy equal education. We all going university with broken heart now. We have still dreams, but with fears. Struggles for living in Afghanistan as a student are too many, from living in a very unexpected security situation, poor economical situation, lack of education, corruption, poverty, to a specific political situation. We are in peace negotiation, but still witness of losing our beloved ones. We struggled for having our primary rights for past 19 years but still don't know what would be our 19 years achievements. We lost many people, our soldiers, our own family members, but still didn't get result. We're facing many concerns yet, but we're going to university. We're going university yet. We're working for a better Afghanistan yet. We have hope to bring peace. We will rise once again. Despite everything that I and my people faced, it has proved in our history. We will never give up, and we will never give up. Thank you.
Our next discussion will be about how to build peace and security on an international level. And we have our guest speaker, Jan Eliasson, with us. He has been the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, and also he's been the Foreign Minister of Sweden. Now he's the chair of the board of SIPRI, Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. And Jan will be interviewed by a young refugee that came to Sweden in 2015. Not only did she learn Swedish and start school here, she also started a peace movement, and a movement for young refugees, unaccompanied minors, primarily from Afghanistan actually, that have come here to Sweden as refugees. And Fatemeh and a lot of young persons were in this sit-down strike for their rights. So give a warm hand to Fatemeh and Jan Eliasson.
Thank you so much. Hello, John. Hi. I hope you're okay today. And I'm glad that you're with us today. It's a big honor.
I'm glad part of this event in solidarity with the victims and families and friends of those who suffered this terrorist attack a while ago, and also an event to celebrate courage of those who continue to study and celebrate the importance of education, and of course take a strong stand against any type of violence. So I'm very glad to join you today.
So much. I would like to ask you that if you can, please describe your image of security situation for students in Afghanistan.
Well, generally, the situation is, of course, characterized by violence. A lot of violence. Afghanistan is one of the most dangerous countries to live in. And we have seen the level of violence rather constant. I personally, as former Deputy Secretary General, is very disappointed that at the same time that talks are going on about some type of reconciliation, a political solution, and at the same time blind violence and terrorist acts take place. It creates a sense of fear and terror in the country, which is very dangerous, and leads to polarization, which is very dangerous. And that's why it's such a great relief to see that the students just continue and continue. And for me, particularly gratifying to see that so many women were part of Kabul University, and that they also see a future. So no, yes, the violence is horrible. It's characterized by the Swedish Afghanistan Committee can vouch for the situation, but I know both the International Red Cross and UNHCR and even the Swedish Embassy warns about the level of violence. When I was there last time, a couple of years ago for the UN, I traveled in an armored car and had an armored vest on me. It was so dangerous. And when I was there, there was a terrorist act just in the neighborhood of the UN office. So it's a very, very dangerous place. And the students and everybody, I would say, takes risks in this violent climate.
And what do you think can contribute to more people getting the right to education and better security?
Well, you have to have decisions taken on higher level. Unfortunately, there are also outside influences that play out. I was myself working very hard with the situation in Syria, and it was a proxy war where neighboring countries played a very important role for the security. And therefore, you need to have sort of a political direction which goes in the direction of peace. And then you have to have means on the ground to reduce the risks and try to get dialogue both locally and regionally with the different entities. And then you got to realize in the end that you live in one country and that a condition for education is a peaceful society. The fight for education is absolutely crucial now. In Afghanistan, with its history of excluding girls and women from professional life and education, it is of historic significance that they will have continued chances to get education. But you also have internationally the risk of the COVID-19, which has reduced education horribly and very seriously in many parts of the world, and probably also in Afghanistan. But to me, education is the key. It's the key to the future. And if I were to list my reasons for hope, after all, in a dark situation today, I would put education very high. The knowledge factor, what we can gain by knowledge and education, is absolutely crucial, both for peace, development, and human rights. Other reasons for hope, by the way, is women and young people. And as a former UN official and Swedish foreign minister, of course, international cooperation is another condition for growth. But you always come back to education. I remember celebrating Malala in New York, who survived a terrorist attack on a bus and became a champion for education. And I think you also, Fatima, here in Sweden, is fighting for that. You see Greta here fighting for education on climate change. So knowledge and facts in a life where alternative facts seem to be produced by certain groups is absolutely crucial. So that's why it's such a great thing to be part of this celebration today.
Well, I would actually ask you the next question that you already talked about, the importance of education in a country like Afghanistan with a majority of illiterate. So there is a lot of students around this world that are watching at this live stream and conversation between us. And we have students from Kabul, for example, who survived this attack. We have students from Sweden, from USA, who are watching at us. What's your advice to us students in this world when it comes to the security situation for students and the education challenging times in countries like Afghanistan?
Well, I think the act of courage and defiance against violence that was so obvious in this case, 18 students died and others also were very seriously hurt. And you still just clean up the place and go back to the place where this terrorist act was committed. It's such a huge act of courage, and we on the outside should in every way possible show our solidarity in different ways, support to these courageous young people, and just ask them to continue to show that courage under dangerous circumstances. And these voices from the young people representing those who search knowledge are even more important, because they are the promise that the change for equality in the direction of equality between men and women will continue, whatever political solutions are found in the end on the higher level. But we can never forget that in the end, it is the condition for the human being that is most important. I always reminded my colleagues in the UN that the first 3 words of the UN Charter is not we the governments, it's we the peoples. So the welfare of the people, peace in the territory of Afghanistan, education for all, and distribution of resources in a fair manner, and good, well-functioning institutions is what it's all about. And that is actually one of the goals of the Sustainable Development Goals, which I think should guide our efforts everywhere. But I want to pay tribute to the students who continue and fight for the the right for knowledge, and by that play an historic role for Afghanistan. And we on the outside have a duty to be at their side.
Thank you so much, Jan, that you've been with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck to everybody.
To you too.
Thank you so much, Fateme Kavari, a student living in Sweden now, but originally from Afghanistan, and you also grew up in Iran until you were 15 years old. And thank you so much, Jan Eliasson, for taking your time to be with us and sharing this with us. I think really optimistic words from both of you. Our next speakers teach at the universities of Stanford and New York. And when they asked their students if they wanted to take part in this conversation, so many students raised their hand and said, yeah, I want to be in this program. And Bill, you work at a design program at Stanford, and Lynn, you work at New York University. So I'll just let you talk. Please, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Annika. Yeah, my name is Bill Burnett, and I run a graduate program at Stanford called Design Impact, where our students try to use the principles of human-centered design to tackle really big problems that could have large-scale impact. Some of the students that I brought with me today are working on disaster relief projects. So when hurricanes and other natural disasters hit, how do we support the survivors and help them, to regain, their homes and all the things they've lost. And another student working on kind of restoring truth on the internet, so we could understand what is truthful and what is just made up. And so our students are passionate about these kinds of problems, working, in large scale in the social domain. And we're excited to be part of this program because we're so inspired by the courage of the students, at Kabul University. The fact that they seek education even in the most difficult times is inspiring for us. We're all suffering under the sort of quarantines of the coronavirus in the U.S. and here in California, it's resurging again. And often people are very, they're sad and they're unhappy and they're angry that they can't go out and they can't have, restaurants and they can't, go to entertainment. But then when we hear about the struggles of the students on this call, it puts our problems in perspective. So we're very happy to be here, excited about the potential of this kind of a dialogue and supporting students around the world, particularly Kabul University, in their quest for education, because education will eventually bring peace and prosperity to the amazing culture of Afghanistan. So we're very happy to be here.
Thank you, Bill. Yes, it's early morning in Stanford and mid-morning in New York, and I want to thank Annika and the Nobel Prize Museum for bringing us all together to discuss education in challenging times. I teach at NYU, which has become an international university based in many parts of the world, including New York, Abu Dhabi, and Shanghai. Within NYU, the Gallatin School of Interdisciplinary and Individualized Study was created for students whose academic interests cross the boundaries of traditional departments and who want to look at those interests through an interdisciplinary lens. For example, a student might build a concentration in community action through classes in the departments of politics, the School of Social Work, and the Graduate School of Public Service. So they're able to cross over from one part of the university to another. Each student is usually motivated by search for a better society and for peace. And because NYU has become so international, we now feel connected to many parts of the world. In fact, the two students I've asked to be here on this program are based, one of them in Santiago de Chile, Gabby Kreutzberger, and the other one in the South Bronx, where we also use art to help the expression and strengthening of the Hispanic immigrant community. Gallatin has had students working on education policy, advocacy, health policy, human rights, child advocacy, performance, digital technology, arts activism, visual culture, and storytelling. And with such a diversity of academic interests, they've gone on to work in government, private, and nonprofit sectors all over the world. And I feel very lucky to work with such a rich range of interests and such a strong sense of social purpose. In a personal sense, my husband was born in Lahore, and his grandfather was from Kabul, from Afghanistan. So in fact, there's a strong sense of connection, both personally and through my work. I think that it's fascinating to bring together these different universities online, to work with Bill Burnett on this and other projects, to be in touch with those of you in Kabul University and in Sweden. And I hope this pandemic, which has made many things more difficult, will open up these lines of communications even more. So I thank you, Annika, for making that possible.
Thank you so much, Bill Burnett and Lynn Karimetta from Stanford and New York University. Thank you so much. Okay, so this is an online seminar from the Nobel Prize Museum in Stockholm. And we bring together students and educators and experts from 3 different countries, from Afghanistan, from the US, and from Sweden. We are so glad that you join us here today to talk about education in challenging times. In 2014, Kailash Satyarthi was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize together with Malala Yousafzai for the struggle against the suppression of children and young people and for the right of all children to education. Kailash Satyarthi and his organization has rescued over 80,000 kids from child labor and slavery, and their work continues. A year ago, I visited the slum area in New Delhi, where one of his projects is going on, and I met some fantastic children there working with the Kailash Satyarthi Foundation. And they have actually created this video for us to show that they will not stop going to school, although all the challenges that try to stop them, not even the pandemic can stop them. So let's listen to the voices from New Delhi in India and Kailash Satyarthi's foundation.
हाय बढ़िया, आप कैसे हो?
मुझे होमवर्क में परेशानी हो रही थी तो
मेरा नाम नुज़हत है और मैं कक्षा 10वीं की छात्रा हूँ और मैं बाल मित्र मंडल इंदिरा कल्याण विहार ओखला दिल्ली की बाल सरपंच हूँ। हमारे यहाँ कैलाश सत्यार्थी चिल्ड्रन फाउंडेशन की तरफ से बाल मित्र मंडल आया, उससे हमने अपने अधिकारों के बारे में जाना और उससे हमें अपने अंदर जो लीडरशिप की क्वालिटी थी वो नज़र आई और हमारे लिए पढ़ाई कितनी इम्पोर्टेंट है वो पता चला। और बाल पंचायत के माध्यम से हम बच्चों को, यहाँ के बच्चों को जागरूक करते हैं और उनके लिए हम काम करते हैं। जैसे कोविड से पहले हमने गर्ल्स सेफ्टी के ऊपर काम किया था, नशा के ऊपर काम किया था। कोविड में हमने बच्चों के लिए खेल का मैदान बनवाया था, नुक्कड़ नाटक भी किया था और बहुत सारी चीज़ें की कोविड में हमने।
नमस्कार, मेरा नाम पूजा है और मैं बाल मित्र मंडल संजय कैंप दिल्ली की उप सरपंच हूँ। और जैसा कि हम सभी जानते हैं कि हम इस वक्त बहुत ही ज़्यादा मुश्किल दौर से गुजर रहे हैं जो कि कोरोना वायरस है। और अभी कुछ समय पहले कई लोग अपने गांव वापस चले गए थे, उनको बहुत ज़्यादा परेशानी हो रही थी, खाने पीने को भी नहीं मिल रहा था और इससे हमारी पढ़ाई पर भी बहुत ज़्यादा असर पड़ रहा है। और हम बाल पंचायत और बाल मित्र मंडल के बच्चे ये ध्यान रख रहे हैं कि इस कोविड से किसी भी बच्चे की ज़िंदगी या पढ़ाई पर कोई असर ना हो और किसी का भी बाल विवाह ना हो, कोई बच्चा बाल मजदूरी की तरफ ना जाए। क्योंकि अगर इस दौर में बच्चे ने अपनी पढ़ाई छोड़ दी तो उसका 1 या 2 साल खराब हो जाएगा और जिससे उसका पढ़ाई से इंटरेस्ट हट जाएगा, जो कि बिल्कुल अच्छा नहीं है। तो हम ये लगातार कोशिश करते रहेंगे कि सभी बच्चे पढ़ाई में मन लगाकर पढ़ें और हम हमसे जितनी भी मदद हो सके हम उनकी मदद करें।
इस कोरोना वायरस में हम सभी को बहुत सारी परेशानियां हुई थी, तो हमने उन लोगों को जिनको बहुत ज़्यादा परेशानी थी उन लोगों को आइडेंटिफाई किया और हम सभी लोगों ने मिलकर उनकी खाने की ज़रूरतों को पूरा किया।
और मेरे को गर्व है कि मेरे समुदाय में ना बाल मजदूरी होती है, ना बाल विवाह होता है और ना ही बाल शोषण होता है और कोई बच्चा भीख नहीं मांगता। और इस कोविड-19 के दौरे में भी कोई बच्चा इन कारों में से कोई काम नहीं किया।
कोरोना वायरस ने पूरी दुनिया को हिला दिया है, लेकिन हमें अपनी पढ़ाई करने से नहीं रोक सकता।
So, thank you to New Delhi and Kailash Satyarthi Foundation for Children. So, this online seminar is about education in challenging times. And exactly 1 month ago, Kabul University was attacked by terrorists, killing 18 students and 1 faculty member. So, what is it like to lead education under such circumstances? In a conversation with Anna Karlstedt, Faculty Program Director at Stockholm University, please welcome Professor Dr. Mohammed Osman Baburi, the Chancellor of Kabul University. So, Anna, please.
Thank you so much for being with us today. I bring very warm greetings from my colleagues at Stockholm University. And we are surely facing a challenging time, but the question is, what do we mean by challenging times? In my role today as an educational leader at Stockholm University, I would like to ask you a question, but it's more from a previous role also. Some time ago, I was the president of the Swedish Red Cross, and what I noticed in that mission was that we have an increased number of cases around the world where the laws of wars are not respected, that you see an increased number of attacks on hospitals and on ambulances and so on, but also on schools. So what I would like to ask you is a very personal question. Where do you find the hope and where do you find the strength to go on when the challenges are so huge, and how do you manage to go on as a chancellor for a university in Kabul after, I mean, you are very used to violence, but after this attack in the beginning of November, where do you find the possibilities to move on in such extreme conditions? That is my heartfelt question for you.
Thank you very much. Please allow me to express my greeting to all you attending this very good virtual meeting. Secondly, I would like to sincerely thank my colleagues who organized this meeting. I really appreciate your sympathy and your feeling regarding our student, regarding young generation, and regarding Afghanistan. Thank you very much. Well, Afghanistan passed very hard 4 last decades. I would like to go a bit to back. Unfortunately, in 1992, when civil war after the collapse of communist regime started, I remember that Kabul University, located and situated in front line between different parties of Mujahideens. So probably it was the most distracted establishment in Kabul during 4 years of civil war in Kabul. Then after that, when Taliban came to power, again, I remember how we started another very hard time. While we were thinking to rebuild the Kabul University to rehabilitate our infrastructure, unfortunately, we lost one major part of our community. Kabul University became with zero number of female faculty members, admin colleagues, and students. In 2001, Kabul University, I remember that when we resumed our activity, it was just ruined. We had nothing. All infrastructures destroyed. Unfortunately, majority part of our faculty members, they left the country. It was really very hard time. It was really very hard time. But we, in 2002, started our work and resumed our work with great hope to rebuild our university, to reconstruct our infrastructure, revive our life, and finally contribute very efficiently to development of the country. I think the tragedy and the insecurity again restarted in 2014. And unfortunately, during last 6 years, as you stated, in Afghanistan, the insurgency level increased dramatically. Many schools, many civilians, communities, many entities and established, they were attacked. But we were thinking that probably universities, and especially Kabul University as a cradle of the knowledge in the country, will not be the target of insurgent and terrorists. But very unfortunately, 1 month ago, the Kabul University attacked by this terrorist, and very unfortunately, the loss of lives of innocent students as a heartbreaking actions shocked us. I began this short synthesis to go back just to tell you that unfortunately, we in some way learned how to survive in this critical situation in Afghanistan, and learn how to combat challenges in the country, especially in higher education. From one side, it's easy to say, because if I go through the details and give you some data, probably it will amaze you, talking about the quality, talking about the rehabilitation of the infrastructure, talking about the expansion of the access, talking about the share of almost 45 to 50% of the female in higher education. It all showed that there are a strong commitment behind our young generation, behind our leaders in higher education, and our, let's say, our academics in our institution. But in the same time, from another side, let's shortly tell you that mental health problems is very severe among our students, and some studies suggest that around 40% of college-age young people suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, clinical levels of depression and anxiety. Of course, this is one side. Another side is the critical economic status that the people of Afghanistan and our government experiencing at this time. And it's very clear that higher education, especially public higher education, 100% relying on this budget allocated by the Treasury and the government. So you can imagine what happens with those our objective that we posed for rehabilitation of our system, and more importantly to contribute to the development, social and economic development of the country. Let's reiterate this important point that we really, as educator, as I personally, as a chancellor of Kabul University, we are encouraged by a strong commitment of our young generation and students. As my colleague stated, just one day after this brutal attack, we received a lot of call messages, and even some students came to university and asking us to keep open the gate of university and the classes for us. And we would like to announce to terrorists and those who vandalize doesn't want to ban us for education, to say that we are very committed and we are very resistant to all your vandalist attack. So it really appreciable, and it, as I stated before, gave us strong courage to work with more commitment for the for the young generation of Afghanistan.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us, and I understand that your message is that you find the strength and the hope because you actually have to, and that we can also find some strength through this very valuable kind of exchange. I will hand over to Annika for the further program. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to the Chancellor of Kabul University and to Anna from Stockholm University. Too many people around the world have to run away from their homes and seek refuge in a whole new country. But what is it like to be rooted in another country? And what can be done from the diaspora to support a country like Afghanistan? Now I'm going to talk to Jan Eliasson, Senior Association Officer at the Swedish Committee for Afghanistan. So Jan, are you with us?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
So first, can you tell me, what do you work with? What is it?
Nobel Prize Museum arranging this very good event. My name is Jan Eliasson. I'm working at the Swedish Committee for Afghanistan. Swedish Committee for Afghanistan is a non-governmental, member-based aid organization. We have members and associations in Sweden working with communication and advocacy, but we have our important work in Afghanistan by providing education, health, working with rural development and human rights in Afghanistan.
So, and you have own experiences by leaving your home country. So, where did you grow up?
I'm originally from province Kunar, which is east part of Afghanistan. And I came to Sweden 2004 as a refugee from Afghanistan. And for me, it was very important, to learn the language and get a proper education. So I started very early with learning Swedish language and getting, a high school education, and then got beyond to the university. And I have my master's degree in political science, and I have been working shortly at SIDA, and now I'm working with Swedish Committee for Afghanistan for more than 3 years.
Yeah. So can you tell us something about what you, from the Swedish Afghanistan Committee, do for education in Afghanistan? How do you support that?
The Swedish Committee for Afghanistan has been, involved in education sector since 1984 by engaging, in capacity development, advocacy, and service delivery. We aim to provide equal access to, quality education in rural Afghanistan. We're not working in cities, but in remote areas in rural Afghanistan. We run so-called community-based education schools at the countryside in Afghanistan in 14 provinces out of 34 provinces of Afghanistan. Around 90,000 children goes annually in our schools. We have a special focus on girls and people with disability, but also children from nomadic people. We have like mobile schools for nomadic children. And we have also coaching classes for girls and women who, for various reasons have not completed their studies. It could be, early marriage or other social or cultural barriers that stop them to study. So we have, these coaching classes in order to make them or give them opportunity to complete their studies. And we also work on improving, quality of education by providing teachers training, but also teachers educator master program. And most importantly, we provide education for midwife and nursing. So we have 2 years midwifery and nursing education for women from different districts in Afghanistan. Yeah. Shortly, we have a major program shortly in education.
What are your dreams for the future of Afghanistan, if you would?
I think my dream is like ordinary Afghans, to have peace and security in Afghanistan. I think this is the solely, dream for every Afghan. And I hope, as Afghans do, that the peace will come soon to Afghanistan so they can live in security and harmony. And after peace, education and a good economy is the most important. When you have a good education and economy, then you can live a peaceful life, and also thinking about human rights, women's rights, and living the life we live here in West. So I hope that the deal between the Afghans, the Taliban, and the Afghan government can be done soon, so they can or some kind of ceasefire. So I hope the peace will come.
So I think what you just said pretty much summarizes what the United Nations has stated in the 17 Global Sustainability Goals. So I think that would be for the whole world, right?
Jan Eliasson is making yes. Well, I think it's basic for everybody, for all human beings, to have peace and security, and then you can have education and good economy, and then you can live your proper life as we do here in Sweden and in US.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Inayat Adel, for joining us here in this seminar. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So the next thing we will do is actually to go into one of the Nobel Prizes of this year, the Literature Prize. And I have asked Lynn Carey Mehta from New York University, who actually teaches a class about Nobel Prize literature. So Lynn, are you with us?
Yes.
Thank you, Annika.
And I think also you will hand over reading a piece of poetry to one of your students. Who will be reading the poem?
I've said that I would introduce a poem, and then Gabby Kreutzberger, who's actually in South America right now, in Chile, will read a short poem as well.
Excellent. Take it away, Lynn.
Good. So Louise Gluck, as we all know, is an American poet who is the recipient of this year's Nobel Prize in Literature. She's currently writer-in-residence at Yale University and lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Born in 1943, she's 77 years old and has spent most of her life in the northeastern part of the United States, teaching at a range of American universities, from Yale now to Stanford and the Iowa Writers Workshop, among many others. She has won most of the most prestigious poetry prizes in the US and now with the Nobel Prize in the world. Her poetry is philosophical, it's ironic, and often personal, addressing issues of trauma, of human identity, and nature. She's published over a dozen volumes of poetry, with another one coming out shortly, and 2 books of essays on poetry, Proofs and Theories, and American Originality. In her poems, she often projects her voice into other natural objects, from a bat or an earthworm to a flower, such as a lily. For example, in a poem called Bats, from her collection A Village Life, published in 2009, she begins, "There are 2 kinds of vision, the seeing of things, which belongs to the science of optics, versus the seeing beyond things, which results from deprivation." Then she goes on to use bats as an image to open our eyes to a new sort of understanding. She writes, "There is a path you cannot see beyond the eye's reach, what the philosophers have called the via negativa. To make a place for light, the mystic shuts his eyes. Illumination of the kind he seeks destroys creatures who depend on things." And this sort of vision, I think, aligns with much of the Indian philosophy of Buddhism and Hinduism that I know, seeking a negative route beyond the real, what we perceive as immediate in our lives. In another poem from The Wild Iris, published in 1992, called The Silver Lily, she writes, "In spring, when the moon rose, it meant time was endless. Snowdrops opened and closed. The clustered seeds of the maples fell in pale drifts, white over white. The moon rose over the birch tree. We have come too far together toward the end now, to fear the end. These nights, I am no longer even certain I know what the end means." And I think that resonates with experience of people in pursuing education in challenging times, and particularly in Afghanistan now. We have chosen a poem called Parable of the Beast to share with you. I've asked my student Gabriela Kreutzberger, currently in Santiago de Chile, to read it out loud for you.
As Professor Lin said, this poem is called The Parable of the Beast, and it is included in the poetry book Meadowlands, published in 1996. The cat circles the kitchen with the dead bird, its new possession. Someone should discuss ethics with the cat as it inquires into the limp bird. In this house, we do not experience will in this manner. Tell that to the animal, its teeth already deep in the flesh of another animal.
Thank you, Gabby.
Thank you so much to Lynn and Gabby from New York University, giving us an introduction to the Nobel Prize in Literature of 2020, the poetry of Louis Gluck. Thank you so much. So, our next thing in the program will be a really exciting thing because it's going to be an online discussion between students in the US, in Afghanistan, and in Sweden. So this whole seminar is about education in challenging times, and the challenges of the students in Kabul is actually connecting to internet also. So they have sent me some videos that we can show in the program to lift up their voices. So as an introduction to this section, we will first hear some voices from Kabul, and then I'm handing over to Sofia, who is the head of the student union at Stockholm University, and she will do a panel discussion with students from many different universities. So it's going to be very exciting, and let's first go over to Kabul.
Hi everyone, my name is Farishta Hashimi and I'm a junior political science student at Kabul University. My everyday life starts from going to university at 7 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. I'm trying my best to study and review everything that I have studied in different classes and do my assignment accordingly. As you know, that the life of a female university and school student is not quite the same as a male student. So besides studying, I have to do all homework or all home chores as well. Being a student in Afghanistan is not easy, especially if you are a girl. Yet all the female students are doing their best to study and overcome the problems they have. Our biggest issue in studying is security, and after that, lack of opportunities and facilities, and low education standards that unfortunately make us very less competitive or not competitive at all with other students around the globe. My dreams are not very different than any other Afghan or any other girl who is living or studying in Afghanistan, and that is peace and prosperity to every Afghan, to have a good life and a bright future. Thanks all.
I believe that just by learning education and by learning knowledge, we can maintain peace and security in Afghanistan. And I am so thirsty to learn education in foreign country. And I want that after my graduation, I came once more in Afghanistan and serve to Afghan teenagers, to those people who endure in fighting and exclusion. And by learning education in foreign country and came in Afghanistan, teach those kinds of people, I can serve to my people. I'm responsible to learn more than everyone. I'm responsible to scream the sounds of those people who were killed in fighting and in exclusion. And I'm responsible to pick up our young sounds in the world by saying we want peace and we want peace. And I'm responsible because of 2 of my classmates that were killed in front of my eyes on 2nd of November. And I promise with myself, with my God, that one day I will ask that who killed my classmates? Who killed my classmates? I will ask and I will learn knowledge, and I promise that one day I will ask this question. Thank you.
My name is Sofia Holmdahl, and I'm the president of the Stockholm University Student Union. And to me, education is about becoming and being free. And I will lead a small discussion on education. And all you participants, I will ask you to raise your hands in Zoom so I can see if you want to speak. And my first question is, what do education mean to you? Elis.
Yes, thank you, Sofia. I think education means a lot of things, and I, for example, I study for knowledge about the world, about humanity, and I study for an exchange of ideas, to interact with people from other countries, from different backgrounds, because I want to make the world a better place, and I think we can do that together. And that's why education is a necessity. It brings people together, and it gives us the knowledge we need.
You. And I will see if you can raise your hand, if I can see it in the computer. I will write down.
You won't see it in the computer. You can just say,
so,
Adrienne.
Adrienne.
Hi, thank you so much for having us here today. So one thing that I wanted to share is that in the design program, we spend a lot of our time just listening to other people and understanding them. And that is really what gets me out of bed in the morning, is the opportunity to be the steward of other people's stories, to take care of those, and then hopefully use those to move towards a brighter future.
Thank you. Go for it. Sujade? Sujude?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear my name.
No, sorry.
Coming off of Adrienne too, I think education to me is just seeing more and more all the holes in every system that we kind of need to address, and then education is teaching me how to properly address all the holes.
Does someone else want to speak? Then it's just to talk. Tammy?
Hi, hello, my name is Tammy. I think for me, education is more of a pathway for economic liberation and social liberation. And I think that's the case for a lot of the people that I went to high school with and the people that I work with in the South Bronx, that education is really a way to create opportunities for yourself, for your family, and for your community.
Thank you. I will go to the next question. I hope you will gladly answer that one as well. And that is a bigger question, perhaps, is what do education mean for the future?
I think education for the future means future leaders and future possibilities and options and freedom.
Thank you.
I think that education for the future also means an opportunity for us to continue to tackle harder and harder questions that our society is facing with even more creative solutions and ways to make sure that we're including everyone in the solutions that we propose forward. So it's an opportunity for all of us to grow together.
Thank you. Donald?
Yeah, I think what both of them said were like spot on, and to add on is I think we have dreams about the future, and I dream a lot about the future and the kind of world that I want to live in and the world we all want to live in together. And so education for the future means to me is how do we realize that future, and like what education is a pathway to realizing, helping us realize that, recognizing all the difficulties, the world that we inherited, and trying to bridge that gap to where we want to head together.
Thank you. Some coughing. Does someone else want to speak? I'm trying to do this as good as I can. I will otherwise move on to the next question. And that is something even bigger, I believe, is how can education change the world? Gabriella?
I think that education is the answer to the eradication of poverty to the solution of the global issues we are facing today regarding sustainability and regarding fights between communities and unjust societies.
Thank you very much for that. Adrian.
I think to add to that, education is our vehicle of continuous discovery and continuous learning, of being lifelong students to really challenge what we know about the world, challenge what we think is possible, and really tackle the hard problems that Gabriella was talking about.
And just to add a little bit more onto that, I think that the reason we are all gathered here today talking about how important education is, regardless of the challenging environments that we have around us, or actually even more so in more challenging environments, is to make sure that we have people at the table who truly understand the most difficult problems our world is facing, and that they are leading the front to come up with solutions to those problems that truly speaks to the way that they have had to move through the world.
Thank you, Nicole, as well. I don't see anyone raising your hands, so I will ask one last question, and that's, why did you choose to study? Nicole, looks like you want to say something. Yeah.
I personally choose to study to design things that make people's lives better in the very simplest sense. So for me, education and having the access to the kind of education that I've had is a huge privilege, and I feel an enormous responsibility to share that with the world and truly listen to people's stories, like Adrian said earlier, to make sure that we really are developing things that matter and that can make people's lives better.
Wonderful. Jan? You're waving your hand?
I'm just impressed by listening to these young voices, because you are the future, and I'm glad you put education so high up on the agenda. It is a specific goal of the Sustainable Development Goals, education, but it's also related to goal number 16 and 17. Goal number 16 talks about the absolute condition for developing society, and that is peaceful societies. We need peaceful society as a basis for any education. We also need the rule of law, and we need well-functioning institutions. And of course, I would add myself, although it's not in the goal, respect of human rights. But if you can work in this direction and take the SDGs as your roadmap, then I think we are in good shape. And if this could also be done all over the world, and if universities would put these Sustainable Development Goals high up on their agenda, I think we could get away from this sense of hopelessness and sort of people giving up too easily and being too pessimistic. The world is a messy place, but there is also hope. And as I said earlier, the hope to me rests in women and girls. It rests with young people and their dreams and aspirations and their sense of good judgment. And it rests with education. And then lastly, it rests with international cooperation.
Thank you. We're all students of the world. So if someone else wants to say some last words, your time is now. No. Yes, of course.
Okay. I'm Abdul Qahar Jawaz, a lecturer communication.
Your internet connection is really bad. We can't hear you.
Kabul University.
We can't really hear you. Okay. No, we can't hear you at all. So, no, we hear you really, really bad, unfortunately. But then I would like to say, for me, education means everything, and students of the world unite. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Sophia handling this very complex situation with participants in 3 different countries at the same time. And I'm really impressed. This is the future. So thank you so much. So we're here in an empty Nobel Prize Museum in Stockholm, doing this online seminar together with fantastic people from Afghanistan, from the US, and from Sweden. And we are talking about education in challenging times. And I asked my colleague Lotta to give us some inspiration from the Nobel Peace Prize laureates. So we'll see if she can show us some of the fantastic objects of this museum.
So here at the Nobel Prize Museum, we tell the stories about the different Nobel Prize recipients that we call Nobel laureates. And since today it's about education and the importance of education, I've chosen now to tell you a little bit more about 2 Nobel laureates that emphasize the importance of education in their work. And I will do it through showing you some objects that they have donated to the museum. In our gallery here at the Nobel Prize Museum, we have a number of objects that Nobel laureates have decided to donate to us. We've asked them to do it. And all the objects have had importance to these laureates in their work or in their lives. And the first object I would like to show you is this megaphone here. And it was donated to us by Tawakkol Karman, the person you see in the background there. And she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2011. And she's from Yemen, and she's been working as a journalist, and she's also one of the persons that took initiative to start protests in Yemen during the 2011 big protests that took place in many different countries in the Middle East and in Northern Africa, where people took stand against their governments, proclaiming peace, proclaiming human rights and democratic rights in their countries. Tawakkol Karman used this megaphone to strengthen her voice and to gather more people and to lead the people in these protests. Tawakkol Karman has also talked about the importance of education, and she writes in an article in 2018 about the conflict in Yemen, where she says that the children of Yemen have the right to attend school without fear and to gaze into their parents' faces without seeing any deprivation, destitution, fear, and helplessness in their eyes. The next object I would like to show you here is this shawl here. You can see in the center of this showcase, and it's a pink shawl, and it was used by Malala Yousafzai, and you can see her wearing this shawl in the background here in the showcase. Malala Yousafzai is a Nobel laureate that was awarded the Peace Prize in 2014. She's the youngest Nobel laureate of all. She was only 17 years old when she was awarded the prize, and she did it for the struggle for education, quality education for every child. And when she wore this shawl, she was actually up in the UN to talk about the importance of this. And this was only 9 months after she had been taken a shot in the head by Talibans who stepped up on her school bus on the way home from school and shot her in the head. She recovered, she came back, and she continued her struggle for education for every child. And this is something she had been struggling for a long time. And during this moment, she stands in front of the UN with this shawl, and it's her 16th birthday. And there are many reasons for why this shawl became significant for her, and therefore she donated it to us.
Thank you, Lotta, for showing us some of the treasures of the Nobel Prize Museum. And now we are going to listen to Malala Yousafzai giving her speech in the United Nations. Thank you.
So, dear sisters and brothers, now it's time to speak up. So today, we call upon the world leaders to change their strategic policies in favor of peace and prosperity. We call upon the world leaders that all the peace deals must protect women's and children's rights. A deal that goes against the rights of women is unacceptable. We call upon all governments to ensure free compulsory education all over the world for every child. We call upon all the governments to fight against terrorism and violence, to protect children from brutality and harm. We call upon the developed nations to support the expansion of educational opportunities for girls in the developing world. We call upon all the communities to be tolerant, to reject prejudice based on caste, creed, sect, color, religion, or gender, to ensure freedom and equality for women so that they can flourish. We cannot all succeed when half of us are held back. We call upon our sisters around the world to be brave, to embrace the strength within themselves and realize their full potential. Dear brothers and sisters, we want schools and education for every child's bright future.
Powerful words from the Nobel Peace Prize laureate Malala Yousafzai. And now we have asked students from Afghanistan, the US, and Sweden to write their own Malala speech, using the template from this part of Malala's speech. So first of all, I'm handing over to Adrienne and Sujude in the US. Thank you.
Hello. To preface this was co-written by students at New York University and Stanford University. Dear sisters and brothers, now it's time to speak up. So today we call upon the world leaders to enhance how society views education, to promote education as a human right and to see students as shepherds to a brighter future. We call upon the world leaders to see education not only for children in classrooms, but for continuous learners and future leaders across all ages, as we aspire to greater understanding of one another. We call upon all governments to ensure that the road to understanding is not one riddled with potholes and dead ends.
We call upon all governments to fight against systems and policies that threaten students' rights to a safe environment, both at home and in class, domestically and abroad. We call upon developed nations to champion communities building equitable education systems and to celebrate the joyous act of discovery by people worldwide. We call upon all communities to provide the necessary access to education that will open eyes and empower people to relieve the burdens of poverty, inequality, and injustice. We call upon our sisters and brothers around the world to be brave, to embrace the strength within themselves and realize their full potential. One child, one teacher, one pen, and one book can change the world. Thank you.
Now it's your turn, Ellis.
Yes, this is the version of the speech from Stockholm in Sweden. Dear sisters and brothers, now it's time to speak up. So today we call upon the world leaders to transform higher education to make it more inclusive and a real prospect for everyone. We call upon the world leaders to regard education around the globe as the human right it really is. We call upon all governments to ensure a worthy situation for all students, a free, accessible, safe, equal, and sustainable education. We call upon all governments to fight against all threats and obstacles students and those who wish to study encounter on a daily basis. We call upon the developed nations to support qualitative higher education for groups of students who are now in reality excluded from academia, and we call upon all communities to continue the struggle against oppression, whether it be based on gender, race, sexuality, or anything else. We call upon our sisters and brothers around the world to be brave, to embrace the strength within themselves and realize their full potential. One student, one teacher, one pen, and one book can change the world.
Thank you so much. We'll go directly.
Dear sisters and brothers, now it's time to speak up. Today, we call upon the world leaders to change this bloody war of Afghanistan with a fundamental peace. We call upon the world leaders to don't victimize us with your own political issue. We call upon all government to fight against the terrorism. We call upon the developed nations to support Afghans in any issue and pave the grounds for education for Afghans. We call upon all sisters and all around the world to be brave, to embrace the strength within themselves and realize their full potential. Dear sisters and brothers, we want schools, education for every child's bright future.
Privilege to listen to students from 3 different universities share their dreams and hopes for the future in an interpretation of the speech given by Nobel Peace Prize laureate Malala Yousafzai to the UN on her when she was 16 years old. I believe that this beacon of hope summarizes beautifully the meeting that we've had today. We've listened to students and educators from different parts of the world discussing education in challenging times. The program here has been one way to gather students and educators in different countries around a theme that we all care deeply about. We hope to stay connected with you in various ways, and perhaps may there even be ways for you to connect with each other. We are approaching the Nobel Week, where this year's Nobel Prizes will be awarded to individuals and organizations who have contributed to the greatest benefit to humankind. And the events and ceremonies this year will probably be more accessible than ever, given that they will all be digital, and you're all invited to follow them online free of charge. Nobel Lectures, the Nobel Prize Concert, the Nobel Week Dialogue, which this year has the theme, The Challenges of Learning, and who will include a knowledgeable panel including 7 Nobel laureates, and that will discuss the future of learning. And, of course, the Nobel Prize ceremonies of Stockholm and Oslo. That is all for today. Warm thanks to all our guests and speakers for participating. And stay connected via social media and newsletters. We hope to see you all soon. Bye.